Okay, welcome to another Orbiter 2010 video, and in this video I want to try to show how to go from the Earth to the Moon and back to the Earth again, doing a sort of a slingshot free return trajectory type of maneuver. In order to save time, I've already got the Delta glider in a 200 by 200 low Earth orbit. You can see if you look over here at orbit MFD, my periapsis is basically 200 kilometers, it's 202, and my apoapsis is about the same. And if you look at align plane MFD, you'll see that I am already in plane with the Moon. So if you want to understand how to do this Earth to Moon free return, then I'm assuming you at least have enough knowledge about orbiter to get into low Earth orbit and to align the plane. If you don't already know how to do those basic things, then this video is probably going to be too advanced for you. So let's go ahead and get started. Going to bring up TransX on this MFD, and I'm also going to start an external MFD, and I'm going to load TransX on that MFD as well. So the first thing we need to do here with this setup, in stage 1 view setup, we're going to select the Moon here with a select target. Once we have that selected, I'm going to press VW to get over to maneuver mode, and we have to turn maneuver mode on or else we can't do anything with our variables. So I'm going to turn maneuver mode on, and then I'm going to go through the variables, and the primary variable that I need to work with at this point is prograde. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm doing a basic TransX setup to get out to the Moon. So if you already know how to use TransX to get to the Moon, then this will be a lot easier. Whereas if you're completely green when it comes to TransX, then this might be a little bit too advanced, and you might want to learn how to use TransX just to get to the Moon first. I've got other videos that show how to do that. So hopefully you got at least enough knowledge with the orbiter to understand how to get into orbit, how to align your plane, and if you have some knowledge with TransX already, that'll help. So once we have maneuver mode and I've got prograde selected, I'm just going to add the normal amount of prograde velocity to get out to the Moon, and that's about that amount actually, and I can adjust down to a medium if I need to get even more refined, or if I can go to a finer setting and do these adjustments if needed. Now obviously this is where the Moon is at right now, and if I were to do this burn, then this is where the Moon would be by the time I got out to this orbital path. That's no good. So I need to come over here to the date, and the date setting is extremely sensitive. So I'm going to come all the way down to ultra, and I'm going to move this forward, and you'll notice as I do this, these two lines are starting to converge, and the closest approach is coming down. So the first thing I'm going to do is get this closest approach as low as it will possibly go, just by using this date, and it looks like it's about right there. Once this is as low as it's going to get, one thing I want to do immediately is in this external MFD, I'm going to press forward, and I'm going to come over here to stage 2, and I want to view encounter. I can see by looking at this encounter that my inclination at the Moon is 5 degrees, 5.4. That would, well, there's two problems. Number one, I'm currently on a collision course with the Moon. This trajectory has me crashing into the Moon, so that's not going to work. But more so, this inclination is sort of a coming out of the west and going toward the east inclination. In order to do a free return, you actually, as far as I know, you have to have a retrograde orbit around the moon. I've tried to do it the other way and I've never been able to make it work. So we actually want an inclination closer to 180 degrees. And the way I can get that, and there's a couple ways. I can work with the date here a little bit, press plus plus, and I can see here now that my inclination is 174, so that's closer to 180. That's that retrograde orbit that I want. So if I go backwards with the date, you can see on this side the inclination is 5 degrees, and that will not work for a free return trajectory. So that's the first important thing to point out, is that we need this retrograde orbit. So once I have that, I can work with the other variables, primarily the prograde, to sort of bring down the orbital altitude here. It says my minimum altitude is 237, but so that's okay where it's at as long as I've got the inclination correct. So this part's okay for now. So what I need to do here, I'm going to press forward to come over to stage 2, go into view setup, and I'm going to press plus plus to set this to escape. Now I'm going to press forward to take this out to the next stage, and as soon as I do that, that's going to change stage 2. You'll see up here it'll change stage 2 to a slingshot plan, and it does that automatically. So in stage 3, what I have to do here is press VW to bring this over to Sling Direct. Then I'm going to press VAR to come to the outward angle, and I'm going to hit minus minus to bring this outward angle down so that this ellipse comes in and wraps really tight in around the Earth. And also I want to mention that this outward angle has to be negative. If you try to go positive with it, like this, if I wrap it around the other way, you might think, well, that looks just as good as the other one, but in fact it doesn't. It won't work. You are trying to send your outward angle in the wrong direction for the free return. So it has to be negative. So as I'm bringing this around, of course the question becomes, how low do I need this outward angle to be? And basically somewhere in the range of about negative 140 is probably what you want. We'll refine it here in a moment, but for now I'm just going to start by eyeballing it, and I'm just going to go with a negative 140. The way I can start to refine this stuff is by working with my variables back in stage 1 and by comparing those with what I can see in stage 2 in the slingshot view. So let me back this up to stage 1, because I have this over here on stage 2 on the slingshot view, which is what I need. And I'm going to work with the variables in Manoeuver in order to bring this PE ratio to 1. It needs to be 1. Right now it's 0.4. And the way I can work with this PE ratio is by working with the prograde velocity. So I'm going to change the prograde velocity to an ultra setting, and I'm just going to add or subtract prograde velocity until I see this PE ratio start to change. And as I'm adding prograde velocity, I can see the PE ratio is getting closer to 1. That's what I want. So now I'm going to go down to a hyper setting, and there it is, 1.001. That's certainly good enough. I believe you can actually get it at exactly 1, but like most things in the orbiter, it doesn't hold at exactly 1, so it doesn't matter as long as we're right there in the ballpark. So the other thing I'm going to do is this relative inclination currently shows 0.05, and that's actually fine. but what I can do is work with the change plane variable, and I can actually reduce that all the way down to 0.00 and some decimal points. You can see it's coming 0.003. I can get that really low, and we'll go with that. So now I have the Slingshot set up, but there's still something else I want to look at. I'm going to, on this MFD, I'm going to need to go out to stage 3. And in stage 3, I'm going to see that my focus PED is showing 15,340 kilometers. This is my altitude back at Earth. So once I perform the burn, I go out to the moon, I slingshot around the moon according to this stage, and then according to stage 3 I come back to Earth, and this is what my orbital altitude will be back at Earth. And an orbital altitude of 15,340 kilometers above the center of the Earth is really high. That's 7,000 kilometers roughly. So if I want to bring this down, and I do, what I can do is back up into stage 1 on this MFD, just so I can see what's going on over here. And I'm going to change over to maneuver mode, and I'm going to go through the variables until I'm at the prograde variable, and I'm going to work with this prograde velocity variable to bring down the focus PED. And you may be thinking, didn't I just work with the prograde variable in order to work with the slingshot? And yes, I did, and this is going to have an impact on this, so I will have to refine this again. So you might need to watch this video 3, 4, or 5 times. It's confusing stuff, but you'll get it eventually. So back in stage 1, view maneuver. In order to make a change to the focus periapsis back at Earth, I'm going to adjust the prograde velocity. So I'm just going to see which way works, and it looks like positive prograde velocity is what works. So I'm just going to keep hitting ++, maybe go to ultra setting, and you can see I'm bringing down the focus PED. So this is again my altitude back at Earth after I've completed the slingshot. Now, something to mention also, due to the, I guess, inaccuracies of TransX, this number can't be completely relied upon. So let's say that I wanted my orbital altitude back at Earth to be 200 kilometers. Then I might think, well, the radius is 6,371 kilometers, so if I add 200 to that, that would give me a focus periapsis of 6,000, or rather 6.571. So I might want to set, oops, wrong variable there. So I might say that I want to set the focus PED like this. Get it in this range where it's 6.564, which is really close to about 200 kilometers. The problem is, once we go out to the moon and come back, this number is going to drift fairly significantly, and that's unfortunate. So what I actually find works a little better is if I kind of err on the low side. So instead of coming back with the 6.5, we'll make it something more like 5.5, and even this won't be very accurate, but I think this will be closer than if I were to try to set it at 6.5. But you'll see as I did that, this dashed yellow line has now moved significantly off of this green ellipse. So what I need to do here is press VW to get back to Sling Direct. And now, remember earlier I said I would need to refine this, and that now I'm going to refine this outward angle. So I'm going to press minus minus, until these line back up. And I don't need to guess, I don't need to visualize it. I can actually come over here to view Slingshot, and I can help line this back up by looking at the PE ratio. As I press minus minus, I can see that PE ratio getting closer to 1. And there it is, basically back down to 1. Okay, now we are basically set up. Let me just take a quick look here, and then I'll explain sort of everything that we have going on. Okay, so we're going to come out to the moon, and we're going to be fairly significantly high above the moon. Our orbital, or our closest approach to the moon is actually going to be like 4,800 kilometers, so we're not going to be very close to the moon at all, but we're still going to sling around the moon, and then we're going to come back to Earth. And at some point during the trip back to Earth, we'll probably have to do some kind of mid-course correction in order to make sure that we get back to Earth with a reasonable altitude. But other than that, the only burn we're going to make is the burn to go out to the moon to actually do the free return. So let's just go ahead and execute this so we can see what's going on. So I'll press back here in stage 1. I press VW to get over to the target view, and I can see I'm 2,000 seconds away from the burn.
Rotation.
Switch over to rotation, kill rotation, and I'm going to warp time ahead till I get closer to the time to burn. Okay, we have the burn coming up here in 100 seconds. So we go ahead and back off time warp for a moment and start to get things lined up. Okay. Turn off prograde. Get our vessel rotated. Okay, so we have the burn coming up in 15 seconds. Burning in 3, 2, 1. Burning. And I'm going to go ahead and warp time ahead to get through this burn more quickly. Got to be a little careful with it because I do have to make sure that green X stays relatively close to the bullseye. Okay, go back to real time for a moment and straighten things out a little bit. About 500 seconds left on the burn. 500 seconds now. Seconds. And we'll start to reduce the main engine a little bit.
Translation.
And as always, we'll get this last little bit with translation. And my goal here is to get the delta V down so that it's 0.00, and then I don't care about the last 3 decimal points. That is good enough, maybe even one more, there we go. So press VW to get over to view maneuver and turn maneuver mode off. Now there is something that we can look at here in the view setup. I can see this dashed yellow line is a little bit off from the green line. That means that my semi-major difference is a little bit off. What I can do to fix that, go back to the prograde position for a moment, and then turn off prograde. That's important.
Rotation. Translation.
Then using translation, I can use a little bit of lateral translation. In this case, it's going to be by pressing 1. And as I do that, you'll see the dashed yellow line start to get in closer with the green line, or I should maybe say the green line is starting to get in closer to the dashed yellow line. That means that our actual orbit is getting more in line with the plan, and the plan was the dashed yellow. So just got a little more to do here. It's getting in pretty close now, just a little bit more. And that looks like it's perfectly overlapped right now. I'm just visualizing that. I don't have a number to go on. It would be nice if there was some kind of number that would show my semi-major difference, but I don't see any such number here. Okay, so let me go to rotation, kill rotation, and for now let me close this external MFD. And let's just kind of warp ahead toward the moon, and we'll see what's going on. Kill rotation again. Take the warp out to 10,000, kill rotation again. Here we are approaching the moon. And you'll see what will happen. I'll have to turn the camera so you'll see. But we're just going to fling right around it, go out the other side, and go down to a slightly slower warp. Speed it up a little bit. Oh. Now we're just going to fling around the moon. Just like that. And now we're going to head back to Earth. See, there's the moon behind us. There's the Earth in front of us. And we're on our way back home. Now I do need to stop halfway here, roughly halfway, and make sure that check for a mid-course correction of some kind. According to TransX, the periapsis back at Earth is 6,746 meters above the center of the Earth, so that would be an orbital altitude of about a little less than 400 kilometers. Let me check an external MFD real quick. Bring up orbit MFD, which is already here. And according to orbit MFD, our periapsis is 374 kilometers. That's not bad at all. This is not going to be accurate. We're still far enough out from the Earth that these numbers are wrong. But it's close enough that I'm going to go ahead and continue to warp time forward to get closer into the Earth. And I can see as I'm getting closer into the Earth, this is actually going up. So if I want an orbital altitude closer to 200 kilometers, then I'll definitely have to do a mid-course correction here in a little bit. But I don't want to do the mid-course correction quite yet. Again, just due to the inaccuracy of this number, I want to wait till I'm at maybe 0.80 before I do the mid-course. So I'm warping time ahead. You can see their periapsis is getting pretty high now. Okay, we'll go with that. We're at 0.80. See, there's the Earth. Kind of a cool glow from the sun there. And there's the moon way back there. So let's go ahead and do our mid-course correction. In TransX Stage 1, we'll go to View Maneuver, turn Maneuver Mode on, And this is fairly basic stuff, so I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail. If you know how to do basic mid-course corrections, then that's all this is. There's no added complication at this point from the free return. All that stuff is over. So we need a little bit of negative outward to bring down our periapsis. Let me reset this because I started with way too much. A little bit of negative outward to bring down our periapsis. According to TransX, here would be our hypothetical periapsis. So I'm going to make that 6.571. Do an adjustment. And in fact, I think I'll go with 6.551 due to the fact that our periapsis is continuing to go up as I get closer to Earth. So if I were to make this 6.571, then instead of having a periapsis of 200 kilometers by the time I got back to Earth, it would be more like 210 or something. So by going a little bit low, then I know that my periapsis is going to continue to climb as I get closer to Earth. So let me go ahead and burn this maneuver, press VW.
Translation. Rotation.
Okay, and there's just 15.76 worth of delta V, so just a couple of clicks of main engine.
Translation.
VW a couple times to get to maneuver, turn maneuver mode off. We'll go back to the prograde position so we can be looking forward. We'll kill rotation. Okay, you can see our periapsis is now 181, so we'll go ahead and accelerate time here to close the rest of the distance on the way to Earth. You'll see our periapsis start to slowly climb. That's why I went a little bit low. If I want a target of 200, then it should be getting closer to 200 as I get in closer to the Earth. So we're almost getting close to periapsis here. Okay, there we have it. Let me close that out and bring up the orbit here instead. And there we are back at Earth after the free return. So all we have to do at this point, obviously, is do a retrograde burn to decelerate and circularize our orbit. That's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you got something out of it, learned a little bit maybe about how to do a free return using TransX. If this was a little bit too fast, and I hope it wasn't, then I will maybe even make another video doing the exact same thing, because I think people can often learn better by seeing the same thing done multiple times. I do want to give a shout out to flytandem. Without his video, then I never would have been able to learn how to do this. I wanted to make my own video though, because I like to explain things in more detail, go into more depth, give more examples, and so I just thought people might benefit a little bit from having another video showing how to do this. But I will put a link down in my description box to his video that shows where I learned how to do this. So that's it. We'll see you next time.